Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today for this webinar all about From Static to Standout, interactive charts for annual reports. We are so excited to have you with us today, but without further ado, I'm going to hand over to your amazing host for today, Scott.
Good stuff. Okay, so I'm Scott. I'm a data viz specialist here at Flourish, and looking forward to walking you through how to enhance your annual reports with Flourish today. So let's have a look at today's agenda. So first of all, we're going to talk about why go interactive at all. So we're going to dig into some of the benefits beyond just adding some fancy animations. Why do we bother going interactive anyway? Then we're going to have a look at Flourish itself, just a little intro, just to say just to familiarize yourself with Flourish itself. Then we'll have a look at some financial data examples, and we'll do a live walkthrough of creating a waterfall chart, breaking down sort of the path from revenue through to profit, and we'll show some animations there as well. And also in that section, we'll sort of compare some traditional kind of static Excel type charts that you might do with more kind of interactive versions in Flourish. And then we've got a section then perhaps on less financial stuff. So it's not all just about numbers. So in that section, we'll look at things like maps, content cards, org charts, and we'll make sure we'll kind of go through the process. In that section, we'll go a little demo of a pictogram. After that, we'll then talk about publishing. So what do you do with all these visuals? How can you publish them? How can you put them into your reports and so on? And then finally, we'll kind of wrap up with some questions at the end. Okay, so let's jump in first of all with why go interactive. So we've got a kind of example here. This is a sort of chart I expect you're kind of used to seeing in financial reports. So we've got the kind of classic stock performance chart, and we're probably all used to seeing this one. But what we've got here is, first of all, there was a little bit of animation as the chart loads in. So that's a kind of nice addition as the chart loads. But crucially on this example, we've also got the ability to switch between years. So if I go onto the chart here and go back, there we go. Okay, so if I switch between the on the toggle here on the chart, I can now go through the different time periods. So looking at 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. So rather than obviously having a static chart where you've got to choose one particular period, for this company, they're lucky enough to have outperformed over all these periods, so they can show all of them on one chart. So that's kind of that's our first sort of example. And if I then go on, so the other kind of points I guess we wanted to get across on why go interactive would be kind of more general things around how you kind of get more engagement with your chart. So I guess that would be the first one. We'd also get some added benefits in terms of allowing users to drill down into your data. So kind of going from top level to bottom level. You also have the option to kind of increase, I guess, kind of transparency. So you're showing more of your data rather than perhaps just sort of picking certain visuals. You can put all of your data up there and declutter your charts a little bit. So what we'll do now is we'll just go into Flourish and we'll kind of look at the Flourish platform itself and just give you a kind of a little bit of an introduction. So those of you that aren't familiar with Flourish, so I kind of think of it as a data visualization storytelling tool. So it's ideal at transforming complex data into rich data, into sort of storytelling experiences. And I guess the key point here is that it's a kind of no code solution. So you don't need to have any sort of programming knowledge or coding experience to build really kind of rich and interactive visualizations. And the way that it does that is built of a huge number of templates for building different kinds of visualizations. So you can kind of go over to the template library, choose your visualization, add your own data in, and then you have loads of options to customize those charts, brand them, and then afterwards you can add them to your website or into Canva designs, download them as images and so on. And we'll go through that a little bit more in the publishing section. So let's jump in and start looking at some examples. And we'll look first of all at financial data. So the kinds of typical sort of KPIs and numbers and all the kind of data that you'd want to go into an annual report. So often we're kind of stuck with static charts and we're building them in tools, sort of traditional tools. And, I guess the question there is sort of what could we do if we could move beyond these kind of basics or static snapshots? And that's where Flourish can come in. So in this section, we'll have a look at how we can kind of change up some of those traditional charts, and then maybe also how we can use some of the slightly more advanced templates in Flourish to kind of really go a few steps further. So first of all, if we have a look at kind of classic charts, so this example here would be something perhaps we're familiar with looking at in an annual report, where we're looking at a breakdown of sales across a couple of different dimensions. So the different divisions, regions, products. And in this static example, obviously we're a little bit constrained. So we're kind of stuck in terms of how much we can fit on the screen. We don't have any option to hover over. And we've got a kind of bit of a decision to make, what data do we show if we've only got one chart to show it in? So here we might have to make a decision between picking a particular story that we think tells the main point we want to get across, but then we might miss out some data that some people might find interesting, or we can sort of show everything, but then we kind of risk a bit of overload. The other thing is obviously these images, once we put them up on the web, they're not super accessible. So, probably the best you can do with an image-based chart is something like a description, but they're not going to have that kind of rich accessibility, and they're also not really going to be responsive. So if you're viewing this on different screen sizes, you have issues there as well. So how can we improve this? So what we can do is if we build this kind of chart in Flourish, we can have something that looks like this. So the same chart again, but this time we've made it interactive, and we've got a few different options here. So we can hover over the chart, we can click into the different elements. In this example, we can actually highlight a particular chart by clicking on it. But we could go a little bit further, perhaps with the hierarchy chart in Flourish, where we could actually drill down and go down into the next level down under some of these regions. What I've also got on here are some little hover overs where I can click on each or hover over each segment and get a little bit more information. This is kind of going to be responsive to screen size. So if we were viewing this on a mobile screen, it would resize, and potentially all the donuts would go into a vertical format. Crucially also, we can just build it all in one template. So whereas when I built that other one, I had to build 3 different charts and lay them out and align them and all that sort of stuff. And if I updated them, I'd have to go into each one, whereas this is built in one project, and it can be all exported as one go. Okay, let's go for the next one. So the same kind of thing can be done on a bar chart. So here we've got another kind of grid of charts layout. And again, this time when I click on the drop down, we can zoom in on particular metrics. We can show the difference between each one, or we can go back to the overall project. Okay, so that's kind of traditional charts. Tables are also a big part of company reports. So we see loads of tables in company reports. We can go a bit further than just showing the table by putting a few extra features in Flourish. So Flourish has the ability to make those tables more dynamic. So we could sort them. We can add the little kind of mini bar chart or spark lines in here. We can add some formatting, and we can even make them searchable as well. So if we have got big tables that we want to use, we can use that space more effectively using Flourish tables. Next section here. So often in a company report, we'll have kind of key data points that we want to pull out. So we'll have, a sales number or a growth rate or something like that we want to highlight. And often the kind of temptation is that we need to put that on a chart. We feel like we've got a number, so we should make a chart. But there are some other options available. We've probably seen these kind of where you have a big number highlighting a sort of hero number. What you can do in Flourish with the number ticker template is bring those to life and sort of build up those numbers and generate a little bit more interest on those numbers as well. So that's a great one, particularly for sort of home pages, landing pages, where you want to draw some attention to your key numbers. So that's kind of small data. Flourish can also do big data as well. So we've got an example here, perhaps where we've got a bigger data set, but it doesn't have to be overwhelming. So what we've got here is just a first introduction to Flourish stories. So this is where we can start to break out data into sections in a story. And this uses the Flourish Data Explorer template. And if we click through, we can see here each of these dots represent a company in the S&P 500. And then as I click through, we can size them by the size of the company. So maybe in a report, this might be kind of giving some context to the company in comparison to its peers. And then we can split them out into sectors here. And what's cool on the Data Explorer template is that we can then move them onto a chart. So we get this nice kind of bee swarm type chart effect as well. So the Data Explorer is a great one for use with this story approach, being able to walk someone through a massive data set and make it a little bit less overwhelming. So next one we've got here is the Marimekko chart. So this one people might not have seen so often, but it is an option we have in Flourish as a template. And this is really useful where you've got two dimensions in your data. So obviously, you could do this same chart here if you just had a profit margin. You could do it as a bar chart with all of the bars the same size. But with a Marimekko chart, you get another dimension on the other axis. And so this means the thickness of the bar here represents, in this case, the share of revenue. So on this particular chart here, we're not just showing the margins, but we can also get a little bit of extra context to show that for this particular company, the United States is the biggest sector and is the biggest region. And so that's kind of even more important, perhaps in this example, that maybe they need to be growing their margins slightly. So really good for kind of market share, customer segments, and particularly where you've got two dimensions and you just want another way of showing those off. Okay, the next one here is a Sankey chart. So Sankey charts are great typically for flows. So any kind of situation where you've got some data showing a flow. But in the annual report context, they can be great for things like profit and loss statements. So here, for example, we're looking at Apple and we can see the different sort of where their revenue comes from, the different products, services, and so on, how that flows through to their total revenue number. And then on the other side, how that gets broken down through costs, expenses, and so on, and how much of that revenue then flows through to the profit at the end of it. So this is really good for sort of supply chains, things like resources, anything like that where there's a flow going on is a great example. Okay, next one we've got here is the waterfall chart. So it's another example. And again, similar to the Apple chart, this is showing a little bit of a flow going from, in this case, the revenue we get from the product all the way through to the profit. And again, this is the sort of thing you'd probably see typically in sort of profit and loss type table in an annual report. But here we can bring it to life in a kind of more visual way. And in this example, we've also got a little bit of interactivity going on. Yeah, so in this case now, as I click between the two buttons here, we've got the two different years, and we can see there's a little bit of a movement there, not a massive one, but we can see in this case, these costs are shrinking between 2024 and 2025, which is kind of driving that little increase in profit that we're seeing at the end there. So that's a waterfall chart. And what we'll do now is we'll jump actually over into Flourish, and we'll kind of go through how you would put one of those together. Okay, so we're now into Flourish, and this is what Flourish would look like. And as you come into the tool, this is kind of all the charts that I've been working on recently. And then when you want to build a new visualization, it's just this blue button up the top here. And if we have a look in here, we can go in, and this is what we call kind of the template chooser. So in here, this is where you can go through and pick from those templates I mentioned, the different kinds of visuals that you can build in Flourish. And so there's a few different options you can do to find your way through this. So there's ways of filtering it on the left here. You can start with your own data if you want to go the other way around. And then we can also just back down. So if we can then also search in here. So we said we wanted a waterfall chart. So if I look for a waterfall chart, and we've got one there. So if I click on that, that will then give me a kind of starting point. So it gives you a starting point for Flourish. And if we look into here, we can go in and I'll quickly walk you through the screen. So up the top here, we have where you can rename the visualization. So for example, we might want to call this my waterfall. And if we go in here, I'll then across the screen, we have the two different tabs here. So we've got preview and data. So preview is where you can change all of your settings and change the look and feel of the chart. And then data is where we're going to go to actually put your content or your numbers into the chart itself. And then finally, up the top here, we've got the options to export and publish the visualization. So if I go into the data here, we can see that Flourish has already added in some kind of like a sort of preview data set, so you know how to lay out your data. And so if we see a waterfall, the way it typically works is you go from left to right. So in this case, down the screen here with the different categories, and then the different amounts are up the top here. So let me just have a look, and I'll go into get some data to add into it. Okay, so if I grab my data, so I'm just going to get this from a spreadsheet. So in this case, I want to overwrite the data that we've got in the waterfall chart at the moment with my own data. And in this particular example, it's a little bit more complicated because we want to have those 2 years and add the filter to the two options. So if I grab the data here, and I'm just going to copy it, I'm going to put it back into my waterfall chart and paste it in. And so what we can see is at the bottom here, Flourish has drawn a chart. And what we can see actually is that we've got kind of two waterfalls going on at the moment. And that's because we've got 2 years. We've added 2 years worth of data. And so what I really want to do is have a little button to toggle between those two options. And that's really easy to do in Flourish. So all I need to do is on the right-hand side here, these are the bindings. So this tells Flourish what you want to do with each column. And I want to add a filter in. So if I just say column C is my filter, so those are the financial years. And what we'll see then, if we go back into the preview, is that we've now got a little control to be able to switch between those 2 years, which gives that little bit of animation that we saw in our example. I can change that if I want. So I might want to make it buttons rather than a drop down. So if I go into the filter controls and filters setting, I can switch here into buttons. So there's lots of other settings in here we can start to use. So things like color, we can add in a header, all of the other kind of settings we'd want to in here. But that's a kind of quick run through of how you'd build a waterfall chart in Flourish. So we'll jump back in now to the presentation, and we're kind of going to move on now to look at non-financial data. So obviously not everything we've got in annual reports is kind of data driven, but Flourish has got you covered on other types of content as well. So we'll have a look at things like cards in this section, when to use maps, and we'll also look at making images and diagrams interactive, and then we'll also do a little demo for building a pictogram. So let's jump in. So cards would be the first one. So the cards template in Flourish allows you to display blocks of content either in a grid or a carousel, and you can additionally sort of configure content to appear when you click on it or hover over it. You can also have an interactive legend, have different categories. You can add pop-ups and panels. And you can also, as you see in this example, you can get pretty creative about how you kind of add images or videos into these templates. So they're ideal for breaking out things like report sections. If you've got different results, company values, or strategic focuses, or something like that, that's a great option for the cards template. You can also split it out, as I say, into a grid option or a carousel, which is what we've got here, where you can have sort of lots of different options and you can scroll through with your mouse to go through different sections. And in this example, as we say, you can click on things and have a look at in more detail. Next one, we've got our maps. So there's loads of different maps options in Flourish. And again, you don't need to know how to code to build these. So the example we've got here is just showing offices around the world. So great for kind of pointing out sort of geographic locations for things. But it also could be used with data as well. So if you have got sort of time series data and it's particularly geographic, you can show that using animations. I always think with a map, the key thing here is to think about the story that you want to tell. Is adding a map going to really help kind of tell the story, or is it kind of there for decoration? So you really want to have a think, is there a geographic pattern I'm trying to show here, or is it an area that people aren't familiar with? So you want to show them where it is on a map. Those would be kind of the key reasons for using a map. The next template we've got, which could be really useful for annual reports, is the interactive SVG template. And what this does is it lets you kind of bring to life any particular image you've made. So, often for an annual report, we might make some kind of diagram showing a process, or in this case, we've got the org chart. And obviously, we could just put that in static form, but it's great if we could make that interactive as well. So we've got a little example here where as I click over the different people on the org chart, we get a little bio that pops up in the corner here. And again, this template's really flexible in terms of like how that appears. You could add videos and stuff in here if you wanted. In this case, we've just got a little kind of side panel that opens up. So this is a really great one, good for things like org charts, but also things like processes, models, kind of complex stuff that you want people to be able to explore and click around. So that's the interactive SVG template. Again, pretty easy to use. You just need to have an SVG, and then you line up IDs on that SVG, and then those are the bits that make it interactive. So again, no kind of coding involved to build something like that. Okay, and then in this section, the final one we've got here is a pictogram. So obviously these are great when you've got kind of quantities that you want to show, or proportions would be good ones. And obviously adding in those little icons is great for kind of, getting a bit more engagement. So in this example here, we're looking at, say, app downloads on different platforms, and we've used the logos for the particular platforms in the pictogram. So what we'll do here is we'll jump across again and we'll go into Flourish and show you how to build one of these. So if I go back into Flourish and we'll go back to our projects again, and this time we'll go for a new visualization. And this time to help find this one, we'll, instead of searching for it at the top here, we'll narrow it down using the type. So we want to use some icons here. So if I click on icons, this gives you all the Flourish templates where we've got some kind of icon going on. And so we've got pictogram here. And again, probably the idea is to try and pick the one that's closest to the one that you want to build. So we'll go for this stacked bar chart option here, and we'll see how we can adapt that to our own data. So we can see again, Flourish has given us a starting point. In this case, it's some energy type data, but I don't want that. I want to clear it out and put my own data in. So if I go into the data tab, and this time again, I've got my own data up here. So first of all, I'll just clear this data out. So if I go up to here and say clear sheet, and then I'm going to go into my data section, and then this time I've got some other data for my pictogram. And so my data in this case is going to be like a customer satisfaction score that I might want to highlight in my report. So if I go back now into my Flourish chart and just paste that in, we can see down the bottom here in the little preview that something's been created. So if I click in, we can see that it's built a pictogram, and it's used kind of the default icons here, just the circles. So that's fine. And we can see we've got the different categories. So we can kind of see here, maybe the header for this chart might be, we could pop a header in, say customer satisfaction has risen or something like that. So that would be our story. And we can kind of see that at the moment from this blue section increasing from 2024 to 25. But maybe we want to go a little bit further. We might want to use some sort of custom icons and things in there. So if I go to the icons setting in Flourish in here, and you can see that we've got a bunch of preset icons in here. So I might want to put a little smiley face or something in here. So that's something I could do. But in this case, what I'd really like to do is have a different icon for each of these metrics. So I'd like a smiley face for satisfied, and a frown or something for unsatisfied. So we've got some of those in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this option here where it says use icon bindings. And what I can do then is go back into the data, and there's another tab here for icons. And we've got the old icons here from that power chart that we were using. And this looks a bit complicated, but these are essentially custom icons. So these this kind of these lines, or these numbers and letters here are SVGs. So you can kind of build your own. And your kind of AI of choice is really good for doing those. If you say, build me an icon for whatever it is you want and give me the path, it will spit out this code for you. But in this case, I'm going to clear that out because I want my my own in there. And so what I need to do is I need to tell Flourish which ID I want to use and which icon for each ID. So I'm going to grab my different options. So satisfied, neutral, unsatisfied. I'm going to put them in this column. And then in the icon, I'm going to put the icon that I want based on what the name of it was in the icon drop down over here. So I'm going to put a smile for that one. I'm going to put meh for that one, and I'm going to put brown for this one. And then hopefully, if we go back into the preview, we should now see that we've got the different icons for each of the different categories. I might want to go a little bit further and also use some color. So one of the things I can do in Flourish is go to the colors section here, and I can then say, okay, well, let's change that up a bit. And I can come in here and edit the color palette. And it's as simple as kind of moving these around. So I might want maybe this yellow for the neutral, and perhaps I'll use the red for the unsatisfied. So now a little bit clearer that this blue section has risen. So we can make those sorts of charts. I probably also need to change this footer down the bottom here, so I can go into the footer section, and maybe I'll change that to company report or whatever it is, the source. And I'll get rid of the link in this case. So that's a chart kind of already sort of virtually ready to be published. I might want to make more changes. I could add my theme in here, but that one's kind of ready to go. So that's kind of most of the section there. We're going to go on to talk about publishing in a second. So we'll be back to this chart to look at how you actually share it. But if I just jump back into the presentation, so in the publishing section, this is kind of how the process works for Flourish. So we've kind of gone through this for the two charts that we've been through. So first of all, we chose our template, then we uploaded the data, or we pasted it in our example, and then these last steps here are going to be how we publish or embed it. And for publishing on the web, it is a case of just going up to that top corner there and hitting publish. So let's jump back into Flourish and just show you that. So the button up the top here, export and publish. And so we've got a few different options here. We can add it into a Canva presentation. So the thing you're looking at the moment as we go through was a Canva presentation. And so that's an example of where we've embedded these Flourish visualizations. But we could also download it as an image if we wanted to. That could be useful if you wanted to put it into a more static report or something. And then finally, you get the option up here to publish it. And it is simple as just hitting publish here, and then you'll get a little embed code that you can put into your website. So that's kind of that's the process for publishing. So pretty simple. There are other options. So one of the things we've kind of touched on a little bit are Flourish stories. So this is where you can start to string together different visualizations into a narrative. So in this example here in the video that we've got playing, this is a scrolly. And so this is just showing you kind of how you could string together maybe some of the charts we've looked at today into a scrolly. And so as you scroll through the page, you go through some of these key metrics and charts. So that's a great way of kind of going a little bit further and bringing the charts together and creating a narrative. And what's great about that is you can actually sort of control some of those settings and things as you go through. So if we think about, for example, the filter, we could have one filter for 2024 on one slide, and then another on the second one as we go through. So that's stories. If you're interested in stories, we have got another webinar just looking at stories, and it could be its own, its own webinar. There's plenty to go through there, but definitely worth having a look at. The other option you've got is to use Canva. So Flourish embeds really nicely into Canva. So for example, what I've done here is just taken in Canva an annual report template here, and I've added in a few Flourish charts. So if we go through it, we've got the kind of Canva part. And then as we go through, we can now see that I've embedded those visuals that we had before into the report itself. So this is something that you can then host up, and it becomes almost like an interactive version of your PDF. So again, that chart we had on the stock price performance is in Canva in your report, and still you can interact with it and move the filters around and so on. And here's the other charts we've got. So again, just showing you again, we've got that kind of functionality sort of built into the report itself. Okay, so that's Canva. Canva also really good for doing things like social media. So for example, if you, rather than just putting it into this kind of report type format, you could build, a post, a LinkedIn post or Instagram post or whatever it is, embed the Flourish visualization, have that animation and interactivity, and then use the kind of design stuff of Canva to produce your post. And then you can share that, screen record it, whatever you want to do with it to create a post. Also really good for presentations, which is essentially what you're looking at the moment. Okay, so in summary, we'll kind of start to sum up here some of the things that we've been through, and then perhaps we can go through some questions. So the kinds of things we've been through. So first of all, we kind of looked at some of the benefits of interactivity. So that was first of all a sort of more personalized exploration. So interactivity enables people to sort of look at the bits that they think are most interesting. So rather than you kind of deciding on the narrative for the user, you can actually let them look through the data themselves. You can obviously break down some of the complexity. So we saw in that big data chart where we had, what's quite a big data set, we could break it up into chunks and walk people through it. We had the drill down part, so enabling people to go from kind of top level numbers to try and drill down and see how you got to those numbers in particular regions or countries perhaps. Um, Improved transparency was another one we mentioned. So, making all of your data or more of your data available rather than, or at least having it in a nicer format than having to put like lots of tables at the end of your report. And then we had some ideas for sort of contextual storytelling. So having things like annotations, we haven't talked too much about annotations, but those are things you could build into your storytelling to give a little bit more context and point out the interesting things as you go through your stories. Then we had a look through some of the different examples. So we had a look at kind of traditional type financial charts and how we could maybe improve those. And then we had a look at some of the more specialized templates that we've got in Flourish. So things like the Marimekko chart, the Sankey chart, and so on. And then we touched also on kind of the process part of this. So making interactive content, particularly in Flourish, is much more easy than having to build and code it yourself. It also enables you to have some sort of efficiencies in terms of branding and making sure that all of your charts look consistent and the spacing and things like that are all kind of consistent across your charts. And then finally, a really important point is making sure that the visuals are accessible across all platforms. So they've got all the kind of accessibility that's built into Flourish. So screen reader accessibility, and also just making sure they look good across all platforms as well. So Flourish is responsive across screen sizes. So if you obviously got some people looking at things on a desktop or on mobile, making sure that they look good on all of those platforms is really important. And what we've got here actually on this page is we've put all of the examples into a collection. I think Annie can probably put that into the chat, and that's something that you can open up and you can duplicate those examples and have a play around with them and have a look in more detail. Okay, I'm going to hand over just now, I think, to Annie, who's just going to go through some of the newer features that we've got in Flourish, and particularly the start with data option that we kind of touched on, I think, when we saw the template chooser.
Hello. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Scott, I am gonna have some questions for you in a minute if you don't mind, but I will quickly go through some of the new things we have coming. But you guys have been asking some amazing questions in the chat. I've been trying very hard to keep up. But we have very recently just launched our new Start with Data workflow. So this means that all you have to do is drop your spreadsheet straight into Flourish, and then Flourish will help you pick out a chart and get you started, which is super exciting and a whole new way of looking at creating a data visualization. But alongside this, we have new education content coming out weekly on our YouTube channel, which I did link earlier, but I can send the link again now. And that is also where we'll be sharing the recording of this webinar by the end of the week. So make sure you subscribe, check it out, and then you can watch this webinar back for all of Scott's amazing tips and tricks. But Scott, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask a few more of these questions for
Wow.
you that came through. So I just took note of a couple of them. Um, People have a few more questions about embedding these charts. I think with reports, they are very often PDFs. So people just want to know if when we embed the reports in a PDF, obviously the animation won't be there anymore, but can you still use Flourish charts in a PDF?
Yeah, you can. So, and I think that's kind of one area that's really great is that you can build these charts once and use them in lots of different areas. So, if you want to put them into a PDF or an email, or as we mentioned, social media or on the web, you can use the same version. So you've got a couple of different options with PDFs. So you could, as we saw, put it into Canva and then export that as a PDF. So that's one way of doing it. The other option, if you're using something else or another design type tool, is you can export the images as SVGs, so a kind of high quality vector images that you can then use in a design tool or whatever kind of tool you're using. You'll be able to download a more static version of the image and put that into a PDF. So those are kind of, guess, the main options. But within Canva, you would be able to sort of maintain that interactivity, which is great.
And then we also had a question about the pictogram that you made, Scott, which is somebody wanted to know if you can edit what appears up top. So I think it's the order of the icons. Maybe you had the satisfaction ones at the bottom. Is there any way you can flip that around?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so in that side panel, there's a lot of different options there to change sort of almost anything on the visual. And one of them is a layout section, and that does allow you to say move the legend to the bottom, or maybe the controls. So if you did want to move those around, or if you wanted to sort of center align them and those sorts of things. So yeah, there's lots of options there to kind of move stuff around. They also have an option to choose what goes into the legend, so you can actually sort of specify the order. So if you wanted unsatisfied to come first, you could move that around. You could also change it in the data as well. That would be another way of kind of changing the order it appears on the screen. So yeah, lots of different options in the settings panel there.
Amazing. Okay, we've got a couple more, and these are going to put you on the spot a little bit. But do you have any chart suggestions for plotting monthly water consumption data from a 14-year study on a medium-sized city? We had a couple of suggestions in the chat, which was a line or an area chart, or maybe a Sankey. But do you have anything to potentially add there?
Yeah, I mean, I think a line chart sounds good. One of the options you can use in Flourish, perhaps I'll just jump into it again here to show you, is when you go into the template chooser here, we do know that it can be quite, there are loads of different templates. As I scroll down, you can see how many different templates we've got. And one of the ways you can kind of narrow down what options are available to you is this purpose option on the left here. So if your data, it sounds like it's change over time is kind of the purpose of what you're trying to show there, the change in the water numbers. So if you click on that, what it will do is give you all the sort of templates that work best with that kind of data set. So line chart obviously jumps up as one of those, but there might be some other options depending on the kind of data. Something like a bump chart might work well if you've got different categories. And things also maybe like a slope chart or something like that. If you've got kind of particular, points in time, that might work well. So we can see the slope chart down here. So that's a really good way of sort of narrowing down that option. And these, I guess, as I say, are all the different ones we would sort of consider as best for that particular type. Whereas if you switch that maybe to sort of part to whole, if you wanted to compare one part to a bigger whole, then obviously things like a pie chart and so on would come up, but also things like bar charts and things like that would be an option. So that's a really good tip actually is in the actual Flourish template chooser here to use this purpose option to try and narrow things down a bit.
Amazing. And I think that answers another question that came in. Somebody was asking, they're fairly new to Flourish. What graphs would you suggest using to highlight your organization's impact on a website? And I think that's a good tip as well, for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a good one to go through. I think also, it's a case of you could try that start with data option there as well. So if you had some data and you weren't sure, put it into Flourish, see what it comes up with, and that might give you some ideas as well.
Amazing. Wow. That was quite a few questions. So thank you so much, Scott. I put you on the spot a little bit there. But yes, thank you so much to everyone for joining. And hopefully see you guys at the next one.